What's up, everybody? I'm JaVonni Brustow. This is the Media Mogul News Hour, and I am here with Mike Jizzle of Slaughterhouse Radio. How are you, Mike?
Pretty good, pretty good. How's it going, JaVonni? Appreciate you for having me, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Become a bit of a fan of your work lately because you've interviewed a number of people that I work with. So I feel like I feel like I'm already acquainted with you quite a bit already.
Yeah, and shout out to for you following back on Twitter as well whenever you did. Thank you for that.
Of course, of course, got to support. So listen, tell us. So who is Mike Jizzle?
Mike G, man. Okay, I'm from West Texas. I was born and raised in Lubbock, Texas, where people may not be familiar with Lubbock, but y'all may be familiar with the Texas Tech Red Raiders beating the Texas Longhorns last night. And I'm from Lubbock, where Texas Tech University is out of. I'm an artist. I'm a radio personality as well as a host as well now. Done a little bit of acting as well. I've been on TV, a couple of Super Bowl commercials a few years back,
Okay.
small radio parts, and I've interviewed several big names on my platform as well as the indie artists that's on that grind trying to make it in this game. You know what I mean? And I got some music out right now on all platforms. I'm pushing over 500,000 streams on all platforms worldwide. Got some new music about to
Oh, that's
come.
very good.
I stay busy. I try to stay busy as well as managing and juggling, life at home with the newborn baby. Well, not a newborn. He's almost 2 years now. He keeps us busy, man. You know what I mean? You know how it is.
Close enough. And whatnot. And of course, being an artist, I did see that you have, a little kid. I was going to say that. That seems like a lot of fun. Trying to juggle all of this along with the baby.
Yeah, yeah, he is, man. He's definitely a
Absolutely.
handful. Uh, I'm away a lot for work, so whenever I am home, he's right there attached to me, and I love him. It's like starting over all over again, and I can say I'm definitely in a different space in life than the first times around when I had a baby, and I'm actually blessed to be in the spot I am today. So I try to do everything I can to make him smile and keep him happy, keep everything going good at home.
Right.
Yeah. How about yourself? Do
Interview.
you have any kids yourself?
I do not
Yeah,
have
yeah. Do you have
kids.
any kids yourself?
Um, I don't. I do not. Look, I could barely start my day today, and I did not have coffee. And so like the fact that I couldn't even get that done. How am I gonna have kids? That's just how I think about that.
Yeah, I
The
would
thought
definitely say
crosses
don't
my
rush it.
mind from time to time. What'd you say?
Yeah, I would definitely say don't rush it. When it does happen, it is a blessing. But definitely, man,
Right.
enjoy the freedom that you do have right now.
I mean, like, look, I enjoy kids. I'm on a school board race right now, someone's communications director, for the sake of helping the future of children. So it's not like I'm that far removed. Will it happen? Possibly. So, um, we'll see. But listen, you were talking about, being in a better place. I mean, I remember you did an interview before where you mentioned, coming from a space of not feeling that you would, like see yourself like building a new house, for instance, not knowing
Yes.
people who had, to being able to do the same. And, from like being on, people's floors in the past. So that's obviously a huge jump, um, from, looking like you might have a bleak, perspective or, start on life in the beginning to get where you are now. So how would you say that process was?
Well, I will definitely tell you, man,
Getting
it's definitely testing. It's definitely testing. Whenever you start from the bottom like that, everybody is quick to say, "Oh, I start from the bottom. I start from the bottom." But those who know me and those who have been close to me throughout my entire life, I can honestly say I started over from the bottom several times. And what you got to do, really, man, is you got to want it for yourself. It's really easy to give up on life, especially when you keep getting thrown curveballs all the time. For me, it
Right.
seemed like, and a lot of people may relate to this, but for me, it seemed like several times whenever something good was finally getting going, like whether it was a good job or a relationship or something. Back in them days, I wasn't doing music or anything like that, but anything, something good was going, something else happened. You know what I mean? And whether it was getting fired from a job or
Right.
getting or quitting from a job or not having no money, to not having any cars. You know what I mean? Not having a way to get around. So you definitely got to want to better your situation. Anybody that's feeling down right now, I would definitely say you got to keep pushing for yourself. Because if you don't fight for yourself, or you don't push it for yourself, nobody's gonna give it to you. You know what I mean?
Right.
I wasn't blessed with anybody that was rich in my family or anything like that. So if you wanted to get it, you had to go out there and make a way to get it. You know what I mean? Everybody I knew struggled at some point in life. To me, those are the kind of stories that motivate me. You know what I mean? People that haven't given up,
Right.
people that may have given up but got a new lease on life, so to speak. And we all know those people, in our life. We
Yeah.
all know somebody like that.
Right. And it's the type of thing that's, super important right now. I mean, just look at, there's a former Miss USA who had just, jumped off a building, like a week or two ago.
Oh, yes, I
I was
read
just
about
hearing
that,
about
man.
how Kevin, yeah, Kevin Gates said that he had a fan that saved him from suicide last summer. Something I didn't realize. There's a
Wow.
rapper, Jay Stash, I think he's from Florida, who just right around New Year's Day, who took, both his life and his girlfriend's.
Yes, yes.
And just again, particularly over the last couple years, uh, you know, just hearing those types of stories, people who have not been able to push through. That's why it's great, great whenever we have a chance to hear someone to, tell their uplifting side where they were actually able, to make it in light of those scenarios.
Yeah, because
Because, I mean,
a lot of
again,
people actually hit me up.
things have not
I
been the
do get a lot of
easiest
people.
over the pandemic for folks.
Yes. Yeah, the pandemic.
Go
The
ahead.
pandemic has definitely been shaking things up. It's definitely been shaking things up. How you been holding up throughout this COVID? Have you been affected by it?
I've been pretty good. It's one of my favorite questions actually to ask others how they're dealing with it, because between I've had protests. I've been out with people who have chosen to make a big deal out of mask in front of us all. All that type of creative stuff.
Yeah.
It's been a lot, but I'm holding up. And actually, I started doing literally the most work that I've done in years since the pandemic started. I think I had started doing video interviews again, probably around the beginning of COVID, which was interesting. And just the work that I've done has sort of skyrocketed in that time period. I mean, that's a good way to stay distracted, um,
Yeah, definitely.
from all the other foolishness.
Yeah, and that's one thing that this pandemic has pushed. It's pushed a lot of people's creativity. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people had to find different ways to make income. If you were one of those people that had to be, I mean, not had to be, but necessarily, but was out all the time touring and doing live performances and live speaking engagements or
Hmm.
live shows or interviews and stuff like that. That pretty much shut the whole world down,
Yeah,
man. COVID really shut
had
the
to
world
find some new
down.
stuff to do.
Yeah, so a lot of people had to find different ways to get creative, and
Yeah.
and the way you got this whole two screen interview thing set up, that's something I aspire to do with my platform, with my shows, because I've always just done it with the recorder, with the old school recorder,
Hmm.
the way the journalists do, and
Uh
that's the way
huh.
I've always done it, and I kind of need to branch out to like video interviews like this because now the options are available now. My podcast is on Spotify and all platforms with Anchor,
Hmm.
but now they have the video option to upload as well. So if you're pretty savvy with this type of stuff, you can upload your video.
Well, to be fair,
Yeah, yes,
yeah. So I wasn't not too long ago, so I haven't been doing that long, and so I was also doing audio podcasts with other people in the past for years, and again, so I was saying I think I'm pretty sure that people have been asking me to do video, and so finally I did. But I can't take too much credit. I haven't been doing it for for all that
Well, it
long.
looks pretty cool, man, and professional.
And again, this was it's also a good way to you know, stay
Yeah,
sane during the pandemic, getting people engaged and whatnot um, in conversation. And most importantly, one of the main reasons why I did it is because I vehemently hate editing. I despise having to do media editing. So it's really easy, of course, to go on live and, action, and that'd be the end of it. You know what I mean? So,
yes, yes,
but
yes.
listen, so
And yeah, it doesn't get more
I
convenient
know
from
that you
there.
mentioned, right. I know that you mentioned doing commercials. Did I see that you were in a Super Bowl commercial?
Yes, yes. I was in
I
like
thought
two Super
that.
Bowl commercials, like two Super Bowl commercials about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, that was a pretty big deal for me and
Nice.
everybody back home over here. Because I didn't know it was gonna be a Super Bowl placement at the time that we shot the commercial. So that was pretty big deal for us. I was happy with that. I was pretty cool. Like hell yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, who couldn't be happy with that? I
Yeah.
was reading that, so let me read over this again and make sure that I saw this correctly. I think that he said he was in a Super Bowl commercial. Yeah, like the team and whatnot. Everyone's of course got to be excited about that.
Yeah, man. It was a
I feel like that's one of those pinch me moments.
yeah, it was for a car company here, or not just here in Lubbock, but a car company, and I'm like asleep. The commercial is actually up on YouTube as well. It may
Okay.
be I think it was a Fiesta Motors commercial, if I'm correct. And I'm like having a bad night. I'm having a bad dream, looking at my blinds or something like that. I'm thinking I'm having a bad dream about not having a car. And at the time that I was shooting this commercial, I related to it. You know what I mean? Because I had girlfriends' moms talking
Hmm.
shit to me for not having a car. I had people at work, or the boss getting on to me for being late to work and not being able to get to work. I've had that, and that's what happens in that commercial. You know what I mean? And then I wake up and I look outside and I actually have a car in my
Hmm.
driveway. So I'm like, it was all a bad
Art
dream. You know
imitating
what
life.
I mean? Yeah. So it was pretty cool. Shout out to Anderson Modeling. Yeah, I was with Anderson Modeling, a talent agency out of Amarillo, Texas. When I shot that, that's who I was
Okay.
represented by at the time.
Okay.
So that's they're pretty cool. They were pretty
Sounds like
cool.
good work.
Yeah.
I think I missed that. So in your list of things that you do, I don't think that I had seen modeling in there. I'm sure that it was there somewhere. I just hadn't seen it. Um, yeah. So you tell me about that.
Yeah.
How has modeling life been?
Well, I went to a few expos, talent expos. You know, I got picked to go to one like a long time ago, and I really didn't pursue it. With something like that, you got knowing what I know now, you got to stay on top of it. You got to pursue it. You got to continue to create avenues and relations, and pretty much you got to stay on top of it. And at that time in my life, I wasn't in the space that I am now. I didn't have
Hmm.
no money. I didn't even have a car at that time. I was in a kind of in a bad place. So I really wasn't ready for it. You know what I mean? I wasn't ready for
I
what all
understand.
entails. In my mind, I was gonna go over there and win everybody over, get $1 million contract, and get put to work immediately. It didn't work out like that. So but I
Hmm.
did since then. I've been to two different ones, two different talent expos, one in Orlando, Florida, and then one over here in Amarillo, Texas as well. And it just I was able to walk a couple of runway shows, for like the Make a Wish Foundation for people that are raising money for the Make a Wish
Okay.
Foundation and other events, but I would like to continue pursuing that as well as acting. You know what I mean? I like to get more into that. That'd be awesome to
Right.
continue doing that as well. But I would always go to auditions. You know what I mean? You don't always get all the auditions you get, so you just go, you give it your chance. I mean, you give it a shot while you're there, and you go home. You can't put too much stock into it if you don't get it. It happens. You're
Right.
competing against a lot of people that are trying to get that one spot. So you got to be prepared to take some losses sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so, look, you never know. And so, when it comes to these auditions and these opportunities, it's always good to show up with a clear head. To do your best while you're there. The way that we met, of course, is through Misty Blanco. She's putting on a reality show for those who don't know.
Shout out to Blanco.
Looking for opening acts for an 8-state tour of hers. And when we had met, I was going to do I was supposed to be doing an interview with her. I actually wasn't 100% sure what I was doing that day. So I literally had shown up. I think that I prepared a whole bunch of notes for something else, I think. But anyway, the afternoon went well. And since then, that was sort of the start of us working together. I think that I did media for a red carpet event of hers, and maybe a year and a half later, here I'm a part of her company. But again, I could have easily just said that morning for whatever we were going to, because I actually thought I was interviewing someone at a museum, and I wasn't sure what her part was. I could have easily just said, I don't feel like it. We could have sent someone else to go do it. But things, that's how things changed. I'm glad that I did, and I was going to leave the area, so I probably wouldn't have even been here for when she decided to work. So, or to come here to start on the show. So, I mean, sometimes you gotta take a chance.
Yeah, you're right, man.
It does work out.
And yeah, shout out to
And
Mr.
so,
Blanco, man. She's really been dope to know. I'm glad that I got to meet her, and I'm glad that I got that interview with her. You know what I mean? When I did, because it's
yeah.
growing into much more. You know what I mean? And she she's done a lot more. Interviews with me, and as well as throw more interviews my way. As well as she also invited me out to New York this summer for the Grammy on the Hill party. So
Oh yes, please come.
man, I would love to because I've never been in New York. You know what I mean? That would be an awesome experience for myself, for my family. So I'm really looking forward to that. I hope I
Yeah.
can make it over there. You know what I mean? Because New York's a long way from Texas. Like literally,
Yeah, if you can.
yeah, literally like
It is.
15 minutes away from
No, it
me driving
absolutely
here.
is.
So yeah, I'm gonna try to make it. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Being with Misty is that I'd say that I'd start spending time around her because I said she actually does things. Like she doesn't talk about doing stuff and just leaves this out in the air. It actually happens. And so, as someone who's trying to be, involved in the community in my area, I got tired of being around other people who just we talk about doing the same thing for years on end. Like I literally washed my hands with everyone
Yeah,
over the summer, and I was like, you know what, I'm from DC. I was going to go back there, and I got a call from her, and I said, okay, good. And again, so great events. She's great as a producer, and so look, if she has an event or has a show, I would 100% recommend attending if at all possible. So yeah, if you can make it to New
yes,
York.
definitely. Yeah, I definitely want to go there, man. She's definitely staying busy and shaking things up out here. For anybody that doesn't know yet, she is on the
That she
Roku.
is.
She's got her own channel on the Roku TV. She's got the Black Economy Rock Fest tour reality show airing right now as well. She's got a new single, Music Box, which is dropping February 6th on all platforms. You can catch it on my radio shows, Mike's Global Mix and Real Talks, which is airing weekdays. Mike's Global Mix airs weekdays at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on the Slaughterhouse radio app, which is a free download. You can go to slaughterhouse.com. We're online, but it's also going to air
Thanks
on
for
Real
the
Talk
plug.
5 as well. So yeah, man. So it's gonna be airing exclusively on my shows until that drops.
Okay. And the best way to do a plug for someone else is to include yourself in one as well, in it as well. That was great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So shout out to Missy Blanco for shooting me that track, man. It's a dope track too, by the way. Music Box coming at y'all. It's coming at y'all.
Absolutely. And listen, could you tell us how you got into, how did you get into doing
Well,
radio? As someone who started as an artist.
I was just doing like I said, I had wanted to do just doing interviews with my phone, walking around. Because me and myself, I feel like I'm one of many from where I come from. I mean, everybody that I know growing up raps or sings or plays a musical
Hmm.
instrument or can do all of them. You know what I mean? I've always been around a lot of talented people all my life, so I know talent when I see it. So I just want to do interviews like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, from the people that I know, as well as the people that I've met around the way from doing music here in Lubbock and the surrounding communities. And whenever Slaughterhouse Radio offered me that spot on their radio show, I mean, on their radio station, man, I took it. You know what I mean? I said, yeah, I'll take that opportunity. They gave me one radio show, which was going to be Mike's Global Mix, which I still have. And that blossomed to two radio spots. You know what I mean? I ended up having two
Nice.
radio shows. So now I have I have a 3 hour radio block every Thursday, and I have a radio show that airs at 2 p.m. every weekday. You know what I mean? So, and I give people the opportunity to get their music played, to share their story with us, and all that. Promote their products, promote the music, their albums, their single.
Very good.
I'm sorry about that.
No, listen, I have
Yes,
a
sir. Go ahead.
question. It's okay. We love something in common. So, we both take artist submission. And just curious. So, how does one tell someone that their music isn't good? Or how do you handle a bad submission? I'm just curious.
I just tell them to do a little work to it, because the things that I've been told whenever I was trying to submit music to radio shows whenever I first started, they'd be
Mhm.
like, man, that ain't it, or the vocals need a little more work, or the music needs a little more mixing, or you need to turn some down, or you just need to keep working out a little bit more, you know what I mean? I mean, if I wanted to be a dick, I could just say, hey, man, that sucks, that's not it, I'm not playing that. You know what I mean? But I mean, who am
Right.
I? You know, I've done some things and I got some music out there, but I'm not no big
Hmm.
reality. I mean, no show. I ain't no big reality show star or a big icon or a big international superstar
Hmm.
to where I can. I feel I don't have the right to tell somebody like that, man. I don't
I
want to
mean, that
crap
doesn't
on
stop
anybody's
people
art.
from just from doing it. Right.
Yeah,
Well, that's a good
yeah.
stance to
If I
take.
say that to somebody, maybe it'll go push them. Yeah, if I say it to somebody, maybe it'll push them go get in the studio, go work a little harder. But I tell them you gotta keep working a little harder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it happens. I get a lot of music around the
Okay.
clock, and not all of it's good. Not all of it's good. I play what is good. I
Hmm.
play what I like. What I feel is good. What people are gonna relate to. What's gonna fit in that mix. It's kind of
Right.
hard. You know what I mean? But I don't take it for granted. You know what I mean? I don't take this spot for granted. Hopefully I inspire somebody else to do it too.
No, absolutely. And even that's something in itself. So, mentioning wanting to inspire other people. You have a lot of artists who, when people criticize, say, their personal life, one of the first things that comes out of their mouth is that they have no intentions of wanting to be an inspiration. Um, so that makes you, apart from, a significant amount of the pack, those who, want to put out material, I guess without any type of regard, for the public or, not wanting to be an inspiration. So um, it's good to say that you do actually want to inspire. And that's a, good productive way, I think, of handling, artist submissions. Um, I'm trying to work on, what type of reaction um, to have to, some of the stuff. I'm sure you have an idea of some of what I might be getting. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
So do people send you
just saying.
music on the regular as
Those are
well
just saying.
too?
Depends, fluctuates. There's moments where it's a lot of, moments where it's less. I started doing more music reviews lately, so now I'm getting the request in, and some of it's a little interesting. But I just thought that I would ask someone else, who's more seasoned in putting things on the air, how you choose to handle, um,
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're doing, I mean,
handle
because you're
responding
doing
to.
live reviews, so I feel that's more authentic, because they can see your reactions, they can see
They're
the
mostly
look
in
on your
writing.
face. Mostly in writing. Okay, well,
Yeah.
that that's a
Yeah,
little
because
bit less on.
yeah. I've actually not done a video review, which that's a very good point. I literally had not thought about that until you just mentioned it. So I might start doing that. I might start doing that.
I
See,
mean, you
I
should.
learned
I mean,
something
you should
today.
if you're a practice as well.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so, look,
Somebody with
I
your
know that you said
confidence
that one
will
of your
definitely.
favorite interviews that you had. I,
Uh,
look, you don't have to tell me twice. I think I'm going to give it a try. But I was just saying that someone that you said was one of your favorite interviews that you did was of
man,
Jay Prince
I would say that's definitely
down
my
there.
biggest one. That's probably my biggest one. I don't know if it'll get much bigger than Jay Prince and Misty Blanco and Little Flip, that stature, 'cause those are pretty big names. And
Right.
I've had Frankie Storm on as well, who's a Grammy nominated singer and songwriter. Uh, she's also an author as well. She got a book out as well. So I mean, but I think some of my favorite interviews have probably been like with an artist out of Fort Worth named Renaissance. And he spells his name
Okay.
Renizance. He's a dope artist, and I've
Okay.
had him on my show twice already. Matter of fact, and he's real down to earth. Like he streams in the millions. He's pretty big. He's got a lot of big name features. He's got a
Okay.
big movement. And the conversations that we've had have always been real. And he's one that inspires people like myself and people that do what I'm doing as well. You know what I mean? Because he gave me a lot of game the last time I interviewed him. He's actually one of those artists that's been able to walk away from his day job and survive solely on
Hmm.
his streaming power, on his music and his merchandise sales and his touring and his shows and
Yeah.
stuff like that. You know what I mean? He's doing shows with like people like King Lil
That's always
G and
a
Bone.
fun jump.
Yes, yes, definitely. And that's what I aspire to do. I mean, because with all the things that I've done as well with my music and my radio, I still got a day job. I still got to get up in the morning and go. I make a lot of money with what I do. I'm blessed to have the job that I do have, but to be able to walk away from your day job and survive and live comfortably. I mean, if I wasn't, even if didn't make it to be rich, you know what I mean? If I could just make the kind of money that I'm making now with my music and my radio, I'd be good. You know what I mean? I'm not greedy. I'm not a greedy man. I can survive. I can feed my
Right. I
family with
understand.
that and live comfortably. 'Cause I live comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm not struggling or nothing like that. So it could be a lot worse. You know what I mean?
Oh,
But I definitely say
absolutely. Yeah.
Renaissance is one of my favorite individuals.
Okay. And just to give some context about Jay Prince, just for those that don't know, he is definitely considered, and you can back me up on this, rather bit of a legend, where you're from. For one, he's responsible for bringing Lil Wayne and Drake together. I know that
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
part of it,
definitely.
and he's worked with a little bit of everyone. I think Meg the Stallion as well. Um, But
Yes,
yes, and I was just wondering. So
he
how,
definitely had.
um, yeah, just how was, I mean, how was that experience of um, having a conversation with him?
Man, it was definitely
Now
it
that
was
would be
definitely a
someone
monumental
I
moment
could
for.
stand to learn something from.
Yes, yes, it was definitely a monumental moment for myself and for everybody over here at Real Talks. Shout out to my boy Triple O and Jana. They are, they helped me produce my show Real Talks. So the day that I went to go meet the icon, man, we actually drove out to Houston. He invited me out to his compound, and my wife and my son Giovanni. Cause I have a son named Giovanni. He spells his name with a G, and so we went out there, man, and we I sat down with him for about an hour, face to face, and man, he gave me a lot of game, man. I asked him some questions. Some of the questions I asked him that I remember most notably is, have you ever had the chance to sign somebody that you chose not to sign or that you didn't sign? And he told me, yeah, it was Destiny's Child. He had an opportunity to sign Destiny's Child, but he didn't do it. So, yeah,
Oh
we
man,
talked about certain his story.
about whatever type of relationship that they might have had. And there's my answer. I
Yeah,
said they had to
yeah,
cross paths at some point in time.
yeah. Well, he told me, the reason that he didn't sign them was because, I mean, because Rap a Lot Records, at that time in the era, it was on some street ish. You know what I mean? They had a bunch
Yeah.
of real G's around. You know what I mean? The atmosphere was not for somebody like Destiny's Child at
Hmm.
that time because they were still really young. That was
I
not the
could
type
see
of stuff they
that.
were. That was not the environment they were brought up in. You know what I mean? So he felt it wasn't the right place for
Right,
them.
right.
So he helped them secure another situation, which they ended up doing as well. It wasn't nothing, no bad thing or nothing like that. He just wanted to look out for them.
Okay. Just
So that
saying.
was
Oh
pretty
yeah,
cool. That was pretty enlightening.
yeah, yeah. And I would probably describe him as being a bit of a masterpiece of Houston. If I could find someone of a similar level, and I still think that might be shooting shooting a little low.
Yeah, well, because Master P actually came down to Houston and learned from him for a while. You know what I mean? So he kind of looked into Houston.
That's what I was saying. I was trying.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, I
mean,
mean,
as far as mogul status, but I was like, probably. But see, yeah, I learned something with that too.
yeah,
And
because whenever Master P
and
came
listen,
across him in Houston, whenever he was over there, he was like, I believe he seen Jay Prince at an event or a club or something. You
and
know what
he's
I
got
mean?
at least a decade. He's got about 10 years on him.
Yeah, and he was already, Jay Prince was
Just saying
already
age
balling.
wise, I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
he's got a little time on him. Yeah.
yeah, he was already balling at that time.
Hmm.
So he was like, "Who's that?" They were like, "Oh, that's baby, that's little Jay. That's Jay Prince.
Hmm.
He was running things. So and he still is. He
Yeah.
still is.
Yes, he is.
So
Yeah.
definitely shout out to Jay Prince. Y'all go get his book, The Art of Science of Respect. It's out on all platforms. It's out anywhere books are sold. It's definitely a
I like
good
the
read.
title.
Y'all should go get it.
Okay. And so regarding another, music scenario that you got going on in your area, look, what was it like being in the Houston area with this Astroworld situation that happened?
Man,
It's one thing for us to like watch this on the news, and it's another, I'm sure, you know, to be in the area, it's probably all over local news,
man,
and the finger pointing,
it was
has just not stopped.
yeah, definitely. My heart does go out to the people that were affected by that. Man, I remember watching. I was watching a live stream of the whole stampede actually taking place on Instagram, I think.
Wow.
And like this was before it went viral. It was like maybe 100 views in when I saw it, and then like a few hours later, it was showing all over the like Good Morning America and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like wow, like man, it's I definitely feel bad for for the people that got hurt, but I feel bad for Travis and all the people that worked so hard to create this event because it looked like it was going to be a
Yeah.
big event. Because keep in mind, this happened on the first day. So for anybody that thought, oh, Travis
Yeah,
not
and
doing
and his
anything,
festivals are a big thing.
yeah, man, they were all his fans, and he was trying to create something big for his fans and his people and the consumers basically, and it all went to crap on the first day. You know what I mean? So they didn't get halfway through the event, and tragedy struck. So I feel, I
Yeah.
definitely feel it was bad. I feel bad for everybody involved, but I don't think they should have they should blame Travis and the people that created this event. Because it's not their fault. That's dumb. That's my opinion
Yeah.
anyway.
I, I almost feel that regarding the finger pointing directed at him, it almost, it doesn't quite make legal sense, even like from a production standpoint of all the people in police that go into running something like this.
Yeah,
How is it that he, manages to just get slandered, just left and right? And for other events that have had, stampedes and whatnot, it's almost not been the same. And I kind of feel like it's because of his, him being side by side with the Kardashians. I feel like if it was someone who wasn't with one, maybe they wouldn't be, including his name and stuff just as bad. But I could be wrong. Of course, that was a horrible thing to sit and watch. And then when I realized that it was really bad was he hired the former mayor of Baltimore, Stephanie Rawlings Blake, to be a spokesperson. And I remember sitting and looking at that, and I said, now, one, why, did he manage to pull someone from Baltimore, a woman who, as I recall, she had to handle riots in Baltimore, and people say that she did a terrible job. And so if that has to be what you go to, that must mean that you're really in trouble.
for real.
um,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. I could definitely feel his sense of pressure. Whenever I would see him talking about it on his IG, and when I would see him doing interviews.
yeah,
I don't think they're still out of the woods about that. Are they? I think they're still going through all that process.
the news has calmed down. So that's that's a first sign at least. I think that the lawsuits were up in the billions, plural, and so I think that the last I heard, maybe in the last week or so, 2 weeks, was that the amount was going to be lowered. Um, by a billion or something. They're not shooting for quite as much as they were in the first place. Um,
Yeah,
so not quite as bad. I'm definitely rooting for him on the other side of this.
the fact that
That
they
he'll
covered the
reach that
cost of
other
all the
side
funeral
sometime
costs.
soon.
The fact that they covered all the funeral costs, I think
Yeah,
that really says I think that's good. That's a good thing. And people are still talking about that.
he offered
People still
mental
trying to
health
put money in that.
services.
Yeah, because that would be a scary
Yeah, and he
situation.
offered mental health services to those who were affected. Yes, absolutely. But I'm saying, but he
Yeah,
went, that extra mile, and of course, to still managed to be dragged afterwards. And hey, something else, Houston related. So I did not realize that it was snowing outside. We talked about this a little bit on the pre-show before we started. For those who don't know, it does actually snow in Texas. But so look, were you affected that much by what happened last year? That really
oh
bad
man,
snowstorm
that was really
that
really
occurred?
crazy. I had my fireplace burning like that whole week. The entire time I was burning wood, I was burning boards. My power went out like maybe once or twice, a couple times. But luckily, I was able to work. I was able to still keep my family going. We didn't lose our power. My neighbor across the street brought me a big old generator just in case I did lose my power. Because at that time,
Oh,
it was just
nice.
my baby was he was still a little bit newborn. But yeah, man, Lubbock was
Yeah.
affected. I mean, this whole area was affected. You know, that like there was a blackout pretty much everywhere. Some people had it worse than others, but I pretty much just stayed home the entire time. I left to get groceries. Luckily, I have a grocery store right down the street, so
Okay.
I don't have to go that far.
Yeah, at least you were able to do that. Yeah, I mean, there were so many people who didn't appear to be able to
Yeah,
move and go
it was
anywhere,
bad.
for
People
that
died,
matter.
man. It was really sad. I mean, but you know, that's what can you do? That's nature. You know what I mean? You can't beat Mother Nature. You know what I mean?
The first things I thought about, when I saw where you were, in regards to, it snowed here a couple times, this month, well, last month now. But I said, but Jesus Christ, there's nothing, like what you all had um, there. And
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I know people that lost their dogs and stuff like that. You know, people's dogs died, and I brought mine into my garage. You know, I have boxers at. You know, I own three boxers. You know, they're my fur babies.
Mhm.
I love them, so like, I gotta take care of them too. So I brought them in when it got cold like that. Yes, definitely.
It's nice to have neighbors who, actually are looking out for you, in a situation like that. I mean, one, you had a fireplace to use. I don't. Secondly, I don't know any of my neighbors. Just hearing them, I'm like, this might be a good time to probably introduce myself to any of them. In the event someone has a generator
Yeah,
lying around, I apparently had not thought about
yeah.
that
My neighbor across the street.
since I've been here.
Shout out Ryan Barber. He's my neighbor. He lives right across the street, man. He had two big old generators, and he actually needed help taking one off of his truck, you know, to have at his house. Because unfortunately for him and his family, his power did go out, you know, right across the street, and it was out for like days
Mm,
or a day or two or something like that. So, and that's just right across the street. You know, I wasn't affected like that, but they were. You know, so him being the guy that he
right.
was like, man, Mike, here's another generator. Take it in case y'all need it. Matter of fact, I still got that generator right here in my garage right now still. You know what I mean? I have he still hasn't taken it back yet. You know what I mean?
Nice.
So he's not worried about it. You know?
Always, yeah, always a blessing to have neighbors like that. And lastly, I wanted to ask, as someone, of course, you are an artist. You've been, doing that for some time, and having a show, multiple shows, of which sidebar, 3 hours is a lot to sit in one setting. Pretty sure I could do it, but yeah, I think my limit's usually around an hour, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's pushing it. But so I wanted to know. So for the people that you speak to, I'm sure that with all the submissions that you receive, you give feedback to some artists, possibly for those who are listening. What would you say is or how would you describe, say, a submission that just would, knock your socks off? And what would you say makes a really good artist that stands out or that would stand
Okay.
out to you?
From what and that's a really good question. That's a good one. I haven't been asked that. I would say if I was to get a really good submission, the quality's got to be really good. You know what I mean? Because knowing how everybody and anybody can just mix their stuff at home now in their closet or in their homemade studio,
Yeah,
that's not always necessarily a good thing. You know, you still got to know how to mix it properly to where it sounds good and to where your vocals don't drown out the instrumental, or the instrumental doesn't drown out your vocals. You know what I
right.
mean? And also, you got to
That
have
happens.
some substance in your lyrics. I mean, because everybody can talk about making money and making it rain in the club, or shooting somebody on the block, or cocking a gun, or getting some, getting, I don't know if I can cuss on their platform, but getting some
Go
girls.
ahead.
You know, everybody can talk about that, but can you really put a real song together? You know, can you tell a story, for
Right.
instance? You know, that's a skill set that not a lot of
Lyrical ability.
artists that are dope artists have. You know what I mean? Not everybody can tell a story, but a lot of people can write a good song. You don't necessarily have to be able to tell a story if you can write a good song. And a good song is a really good constructed song with a hook. Some bars actually that you're actually saying something. If you can sing on top of that, that's even better.
Yeah.
If you mix it by yourself, that's even better. You know
Right.
what I mean? But a good song to me is something that is actually quality production, and you got some substance in your music and your lyrics. If you got something like that, it's gonna catch my attention. It's probably gonna end up in my mixes. You know what I mean? In my rotation all the time.
Mhm.
That's what I would say. Anybody listening?
That's a good answer. Good answer. I mean, I do have to admit, even though I did ask before, how do you tell someone, this stuff sucks? I mean, I have, there are some people, who don't meet necessarily all of that criteria. And, sometimes I look at, submissions of certain artists and I'm just like, they're just not quite there. Sometimes I literally, I follow some people and I will, check in, 6 months later, a year later, I know that someone's improving, that they're progressing. And I will check in to see if maybe now they've got it. Maybe if not, I'll come back, a little later and try to, similarly give, some type of productive, tips, whether it's, production,
Sure, sure.
et cetera. I know one person,
Yeah,
I won't say them by name. I know that they had made it, modeling, not necessarily with music, but I know that the reason that they hadn't with music, and I hadn't had a chance to mention it to them, it is 100% their production. Not necessarily, lyrical ability that's an issue. Aesthetics fine. Um, you're able to rap, but it is your finished product, that's holding you back. And so again, when I have the chance, I try to, mention those things to folks.
yeah. You can
Sometimes
always
it's not,
tell.
sometimes some things are a little harder to, some people are harder to, address than others.
I feel that you can always
But yeah,
tell
go
when it's
ahead.
a new artist. You can always feel when a new artist is first starting out because a lot of times they necessarily haven't found their voice. Like they don't know how to
Yeah,
deliver their voice. You know what I mean? They don't know how they want their voice to come across. Like me and my friends, we got a running joke in
right.
the studio. Every time I record something, I'll be like, "Man, can you make me sound like Trey and Zero? Can you make me sound like Trey and Zero?" And we just say that jokingly. You know what I mean? But they actually had somebody. He actually had somebody tell him that one time in the studio. It was a little bitty white dude telling him, "Can you make me sound like Trey and Zero?" And my homeboy told him, "You ain't Trey or Zero." So sometimes
Yeah, I mean, there's only but so much propping up that one can do. People don't realize that. Look, at some point in time, you're gonna be in front of people. Mike's gonna come out, and it's showtime. And certain effects and things of that nature won't be there. But listen, I appreciate that, that advice. I know that there are artists that want to hear that. So, hey, for those who want to be on Slaughterhouse Radio, you've got your little cheat sheet on what it is you might be looking for, what might, push you a little bit further ahead in line.
yeah,
So,
and
you can
definitely,
rewind.
whenever people send me submissions, I'll go check out their profile, their pages. I definitely look for consistency across their pages. If you're an artist, you want your artist page and profile to display that. You know what I mean? You don't want to say you're a rapper. You don't want to
Right.
come on your page, or people don't want to come on your page and not be able to find no music. And see a bunch of pictures of guns and uh, hunting and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Promote your product. Promote your business. Promote whatever it is you got.
My biggest pet peeve is finding what people do.
Yeah,
Like like you said, if you're an artist, or say there's someone that I wanted to cover and I don't know what his name is. And so this happens, somewhat
yeah,
frequently, I just
But
asked
they
someone
have to,
recently. I
yeah.
really like them as an artist. I really like this person, but I had like three different names, and I said, "Which one do you, which one do you go by?" Like before I finished this, like I thought I could just
Yeah,
write
which
something in
one is
peace,
it?
but I couldn't. I had to ask. I still didn't get an answer. I think I figured it out on my own. The response was not necessarily an answer. Or my other pet peeve is a bio. Like I feel like I should be able to find something about a person somewhere. Um, just something. You have interviews. You of course are on air. You have social media where you talk about
I have a
yourself.
link
But
tree.
I I spend so much time. Yes, absolutely. So look, all that stuff is there, but there are so many times where I have these tangents about why do I have to dig and dig and dig and dig and dig to try and figure out what someone does, where their music is,
Yeah.
and then sometimes I'll take a break and I'll come back a week later and then voila, I found it. And then people wonder, why they're not able to
Yeah.
make any type
I
of
mean, people like
progress.
ourselves, people that are in media, any in any capacity, we tend to have a short attention span. You know what I mean? We got so much coming at us. We got so much that we're trying to take on at one time. We got so much that we're juggling and doing at one time, as well as like taking on life as well. So if artists,
Right,
if you're trying to get yourself heard and you're trying to get yourself out there, make your music readily, available. Make it easily to find. You know what I mean? Don't make it impossible to find you. Don't have your profile on private. You know what I mean? How are you gonna send me a link and I can't get on your profile if it's private? What kind of shit is that? That's not gonna help me at all. That's not gonna help you at all.
and look, as far as consistency, one thing that a little recent pet peeve of mine regarding consistency. Um, do people really think when they're promoting themselves as artists, and I go to your social media and you're just like retweeting porn all day? I mean, that might be fine for me to look at, but I'm pretty sure that there are some other people who might you know say I can't follow
Yeah,
this guy. I can't do this. And then who knows, you might have a show and then you'll have people who might not, chose not to come because they stopped following you because they're unable to sit and take that in. And this is like more of a recent thing. This is not like a long-standing phenomenon. I did not have this problem 5 years ago. And now I just scroll through social media. I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand if I met someone at an event who gave me a card or something, and this is what I just pulled up.
yeah,
You should not be giving business
yeah,
cards that involve porn unless you're doing it.
yeah. I don't have anything like that.
That's a different
I don't
story.
have anything like that on my timelines, man. Because for the most part, I have a lot of nieces and nephews and kids that follow me as well. You know what I mean? So I try to keep it. I'm not gonna say PG-13 or anything like that, but I don't have stuff like that
Right, of
on there.
course,
You
I
know what I mean? Yeah.
understand.
I don't have stuff like that on there because I mean it's just not professional. You know what I mean? I want to carry myself accordingly. I have my name attached to certain things, and I want to be taken seriously with what I do as well. You know what I mean? So if you come on my profile, you're gonna see music and flyers and videos and stuff about shows and interviews, and you'll see some dumb stuff. You'll see some funny stuff. You might see some conspiracy
Yeah.
stuff, some alien stuff. I mean, but I just be posting stuff sometimes. But I don't post stuff like that. You know what I mean? No, no porn stuff. I mean, because my wife would be mad as fuck too. By the way.
That's the wife's always a good deterrent
Yeah,
for that.
yeah.
Ask what's that? What are you posting? What am I looking at? That's a whole other
What the
story.
hell is this? I can already hear. Yeah.
And sidebar, look, with you being from Lubbock, to my understanding, that city has you all have a history of people claiming they had alien sightings
Man,
or
yeah.
UFO sightings there in the past.
Yep.
So that completely would make sense why I would see that you would share something alien related.
I mean, I've never been a stranger about it. I've seen a UFO on two separate occasions, and I got pictures of it. I got pictures of both events, but
That's why I said your area is literally known for
yeah,
this.
yeah, and whenever I did it, the last time that I seen the UFO, I was with like 20, 30 people. We were outside the mall, outside the movie place over here,
Okay.
It was broad daylight. There was a UFO in the sky. There was not a cloud in the sky. It was. I mean, it was a UFO. There's really no other way to put it.
Oh man. Oh.
And I got a picture of it too. So I was with my wife and my kids, and 30 other people in Lubbock. Everybody had their phone on it. People were recording it, and of course, the news they try to say it was a weather balloon, but if you were there, you knew it wasn't no weather balloon. But that's really all we could say about it. You know what I mean?
I'm going to look for that. I'm going to look for that on your page. And also in the same city, I believe it was Lubbock, because I know someone who lives around in that vicinity. Um, you all were known for, apparently, I think it was in the 80s, there was a sighting of um, someone said that they saw Mary Magdalene and like 30,000 people, or like tens of thousands of people came and showed up to see this. So I'm just saying that's an interesting place, and one where apparently you all have a lot of sightings um, of stuff there.
Yeah, there's a lot of unexplained things that happen
A
in
lot of
this
people
area,
come to
man.
my area, but nobody comes for Mary Magdalene. I'm just saying.
Yeah, there's been a lot of crazy, unexplained things that happen in this area. Not just Lubbock alone. A lot of the surrounding communities. I mean, I know last year there was a crying statue of a Virgin Mary in a church in Hobbs, New Mexico, and we went out there and saw it. You know what I mean? And that was pretty cool. Like the tears, they smelled like roses. It was like an oily
Uh,
substance. Like by the time I got there, they had started letting the public touch it and stuff like that because a lot of people were trying to touch it and wipe the tears.
I read about
Yeah,
that. I just forgot. Because I just looked it up again because I wanted to make sure that I was right. Um, the one that was in the 80s, and then I said, "Wait a minute, it happened again." What are the chances of
yeah.
that?
That was yeah. That was really a miracle, man. Because a friend of mine went and he was actually able to dab some of the tears with the napkin and he put it into a little baggie. And to this day, it still smells like roses. You know what I mean? That's pretty amazing.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing. And yet, look, for those who might be watching, and I don't know, their eyes are widening. Look it up. This was a thing, that was widely reported on. Look, I mean, I was shocked on this earlier this morning when I was reading about it. Look, I don't want to hold you, but before we go, could you let everyone know, one, when your shows are, and how to find you on social media?
Yes, everybody. And I do follow back. Y'all hear me? I do follow back. I'm at the real Mike G dot music. Music spelled MUZIK on Instagram. I'm Michael Garza on Facebook. I have 4 Facebook pages. I have one for each show. I have one for Real Talks with Mike Jizzle. Real spell REEL. I have one for Mike's Global Mix. I have one for my music page. That's Mike G Music. Music spelled MUZIK. On Twitter, I'm at the real Mike GM. Um, I don't have a Snapchat, but you can also follow me on. Go to my link tree as well. If you go to any of my social media pages, I have a link tree on there, and that'll take you to anything. My shows they air. Mike's Global Mix airs
Very good.
weekdays at 6 a.m. and at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. On Thursdays, Real Talks airs following Mike's Global Mix at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time every Thursday, and on Saturdays as well at 12 p.m. And I got new music dropping in about a month. My new single, Still Alright, it hit about 68,000
Nice.
streams already. The video is out on YouTube as well. That's featuring Triple O. My boy Triple O, his new album is out on all platforms called Raw, Volume 1, featuring your boy Mike G as well. Our single Money and Smoke hits about 70,000 streams already too. I mean, we're trying to push it, man. We're trying to push it. Anybody out there that's debating on whether we should start doing this or maybe I should start doing this, ain't no time like the best time like right now. So go do it right now. Go chase that dream. Ain't nobody gonna make it
Amen.
happen for you if you don't make it happen yourself, man. JaVonni, I do appreciate you for having me on your platform, man. Shout out to the Misty Corporation, the Misty TV Corporation.
Absolutely.
definitely shout out to Misty Corporation for having me.
Look, you gave some of the best advice. You said, there's no better time than now. If you're contemplating it, get out and do it. That was the whole point that I made about how myself and Misty met. I tell her all the time, I said that, you know why you don't have any trouble out of me and why I don't ever argue? I said, because generally, a lot of what you've suggested or mentioned to me as advice I've heard before. So, and sometimes years before. So, as soon as it comes out, I'm like, yep, got it. I'm on it. You don't have to tell me twice. I would assume, I think I'm probably one of the least problematic people for that reason. Do it. Do it now. So that we're not talking about this, 6 months to 2 years from now. Get it done. But look, Mike, it was a pleasure speaking to you. I want you to keep in touch. Look, for those who are following, look, I'm not going to go through my social media. Look, Google JaVonni Brustow. I'm going to play an outro. I want you to hang behind. I'll be with you in just a second.